Paul, good to have you back on Wealth Talk today.
Hi Chris, pleasure to be here as always.
So it was earlier on in the summer when you were last on the podcast, and that time we were talking about 3 SaaS strategies that business owners can use to build their wealth. And you've got a lot of knowledge. We know that when it comes to pensions, and especially that SaaS pension, which we so much love. And we're kind of taking a different spin on it today, aren't we? And we're talking specifically about how to create a tax-free family trust fund. So why don't we kick off by actually dissecting what is a family trust fund?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, look, as you said, it's a topic that's hugely close to my heart. WealthBuilders have been helping people with this solution for a long time, but I want to take us down a slightly different angle, as you said today, because really this trust fund, this family trust fund, is such a powerful tool for business owners to ultimately take an asset that almost everybody has already got in their life, which is pensions of one kind or another, and to transform it into, an enormously powerful wealth generating and income generating asset. And that's an asset that can look after you for many, many years, but also is a hugely powerful tool that will look after your loved ones for many years, long after you're gone, if you do a great job of creating it. And as you already alluded to, it's something that, we are big fans of. It's a big specialism of ours, and of course it's the SSAS pension. Of course, it's not just great for existing pensions, and I guess that's what we'll get into today as well, and that's the sort of slightly different angle I was alluding to there.
Yeah, okay, good. So, there's a lot of different reasons why someone would want to look at this. So I think it's probably best if we just start running through some of those reasons. So where would we begin? Why? What are some of those benefits?
Okay. Well, I think probably the single biggest benefit, or there are 2 in fact, focus on tax. And as we chat through the points, we'll obviously expand on that in a little bit more detail. But for me, one of the number 1 reasons why people can think about and should be thinking about, whether a SSAS pension would work for them is because it really significantly maximizes the legacy that you will leave over a number of decades. And that serves you well, hopefully, during the time in your life when you're looking to tap into asset income and do live the lifestyle that you want to lead. But I suppose the point I'm making here first off is a SSAS is an entirely inheritance tax-free family trust fund. No inheritance tax to your loved ones at all, as long as you leave it to them in the right way and you make sure you've got a few things in place. Falls completely outside of the scope of inheritance tax, which is pretty huge, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Any other tax benefits?
Yeah, absolutely. A couple more. When members of the SSAS, the people that are in the SSAS and working together to make their money work hard and to do all those good things, and ultimately, create themselves a great income vehicle and a future legacy vehicle, get to the age of 55. Now that's current. Actually, in a few years' time, sadly, the minimum pension age in the UK goes up to 57, which will be a bit disheartening for some, I'm sure. We're all living longer. The state is struggling to support us all, and of course we've all seen the way that the state pension age has increased over recent years. Unfortunately, personal pensions and company pension minimum ages are going up too. But each member in that SSAS gets the ability to tap into the first 25% of their share of it, completely tax-free. No income tax, no capital gains tax, no tax of any kind on that first quarter. Which, can be hugely helpful for you if you're at that stage of your life when you're looking at building more assets. For example, property is an obvious asset class that lots of people are interested in. And as fantastic as a SSAS is, there is one very big thing that it can't do, and that's to buy residential property. Without straying off onto a property tangent here, we know lots and lots of our members like property as an asset class. So one of the things that you could use that money for is to consider whether you can create more income in your life through using it to buy an asset, whether that's property or something else. And I suppose the other big tax benefit is back to the point I was making a little while ago, which is if you do a great job of this, it can be, a really powerful income generating tool for you, hopefully for many, many decades, long before you get to thinking about leaving a legacy. And so the other hugely significant power that a SSAS has is the ability, like all pensions, to allow you to have completely tax-free growth on your money until at least the age of 75.
Wow. Okay. So we're already beginning to see some of the power here.
Yeah, absolutely. And, actually, it could also be long after the age of 75. The only reason 75 is a key age is because it's at that point where certain tests need to be performed on all pensions to assess their value. And that takes us on to another point in a moment, which people often get confused about, actually, which is lifetime allowance.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that one, Paul, because maybe you can just explain. Obviously, a lot of our listeners and members already have SSASs. They understand about a lifetime allowance, but just explain what is that and why is it different when it comes to the family trust fund?
Sure. Well, it's, as you're absolutely right. Sadly, though, lots of people don't fully understand the lifetime allowance. Look, it's hugely complicated, overly complicated probably, and people do get confused with it, and it can sometimes lead them to thinking that a SSAS might not be for them because they might be somewhere close to or already at or above that lifetime allowance figure. In as simple a way as I possibly can describe it, the lifetime allowance is easiest thought of, I think, as like a glass ceiling for your pension savings, for the value that you've got in all of your pensions, UK pensions specifically. Okay, so whether you've got a SSAS, whether you've got other pensions, whether you've got a SSAS and some other pensions, it doesn't matter. The total value of all your pensions is taken into account using something called the lifetime allowance. And as I say, it's this glass ceiling that at that point, which right now in the 21-22 tax year, which is what we're in at the moment, it's just a shade over £1 million, £1,073 and a few hundreds. But that £1,073 is the amount of money you can have in your pensions before HMRC start to apply some tests to that money, but those tests are taken at sort of pretty key junctions in people's lives. So the common misconception is as soon as you get to £1,073,000 or whatever the lifetime allowance figure is in the future, you automatically stop getting tax-free growth. But that isn't the case. It's absolutely not the case. In fact, your pot still continues to grow, but it means that at a point in the future, there might be a test performed on your pension. And the outcome of that test might be that if you're in excess of that lifetime allowance, that there will be some tax to pay on the value of the pension over and above that limit. Okay. Does that make sense? Have I explained that in as simple a way as I possibly can? I think I have. Yeah,
so certainly there's no reason for someone to kind of take their foot off the pedal when it comes to hitting that figure. They should, if they wish, continue to keep building up their pension pot.
Oh, for sure. And there are some really quite clever and sophisticated things that you can do if you have a SSAS that are unique to it because it's a multi-member pension. So unlike personal pensions, which are for one person and one person only, a SSAS is a multi-member pension. It can have up to 11 members, and they can be family members, spouses, they can be business partners, it can be any mix of people that you choose. And, you need to choose carefully because that means, you're basically almost in a JV agreement with the people that you invite in. But, each one of those people has their own lifetime allowance. You compound your returns because you all invest together. But if you're a family, let's say, a typical family setup, 2.4 children, let's imagine, there's a really, really clever function that you can use, which is called earmarking. And what it allows you to do is to carefully allocate the returns from different investments that the SAS has to different members. So let me explain what I mean by that. Just for simplicity, let's imagine you've got 4 members in the scheme. One of those people has a very high pension value, and the other 3 people have a lower pension value. Now, there's quite a sophisticated way of balancing out the books, if you like. And it isn't an instant fix. It's not something you can do overnight. It takes some years to put into place and to operate. But effectively, what it allows you to do is to individually pick year by year what returns from what assets get assigned to what member. And that basically means that you can deliberately stagnate the growth that goes to the person with the biggest pot, and you can deliberately increase the amount of growth that goes to the people with the smaller pots. So over time, what you get is the effect of the smaller pots creeping up at a higher rate than they would, and the larger pot slowing down, which of course then means that you start to maximize each person's lifetime allowance in the SAS. And that's a great way of actually mitigating the lifetime allowance taxes that could apply to the person with the larger pot.
Mm. So am I right, Paul, that any members need to be at least 18 years of age before they can join a SAS?
Yeah, that's right. To have a SAS that doesn't have, a huge amount of complexity and restrictions on it, which is 99% of people's SASs, all members would need to be trustees, and a trustee is a position of responsibility. So you have to be an adult legally, which here in the UK, of course, means you need to be 18 years old.
And if someone's listening now, Paul, and they've got children that are younger than that, but they're very interested in this concept, what can we do with children, obviously under the age of 18?
Well, that's a great question, and there's a really interesting answer to that, and it's really not very well known. You can create a pension for a child, a basic, simple pension, if you want to. If you want to start thinking about creating a future pot of money for your children, if you want to start building almost an upfront legacy for them in advance, it could be you as the parents, it could be you if you're the grandparents for your grandchildren, you can actually start contributing into simple pensions for children so that every year you're putting money away. And the great thing about that is that when you put that money into the pension, HMRC top it up by 20% for free. Now, there are some limits because, of course, when HMRC are giving away money for free, it's usually within some confines, but each child or grandchild could have up to £3,600 in a pension as new money each year, which includes the top up from the government. So it's actually £2,880 of your cash could go in to a pension for your child, and then the government would top that up in the tax year to make it £3,600.
And someone could do that as soon as they're born. They could set that up.
Yes, you can create a pension for a child as soon as they're born if you want to, and if you wanted to every single year, you could pay that small amount of money in, and the government would top up straight away with 20% tax relief. So do that over a number of years, it can have a really significant impact, over 18 years of a child's life, depending on what investment returns you get. And of course, that's always, the challenging thing, but you could end up with a pretty fantastic pension for your child or your grandchild by the time they've reached 18, let alone them creating pensions from any employment that they have past that point.
And then can they take that pension and almost attach it to the SSAS or bring it in?
Absolutely. As soon as they're 18, and if they understand the role, and if you as a family agree that it's sensible for you to all do that, and actually, as a quick aside, I think it's a fantastic way of educating your children about how to build and manage wealth. I mean, doing it as a family for me feels super cool, because even from a young age, you're helping them think about their financial wealth and their financial future. But yeah, you're absolutely right. When they're 18, any age after that point, you can bring in the existing pensions that you've created for them. I mean, just a very quick point, of course, which is, anyone thinking about creating something like this should definitely speak to a qualified financial advisor, of course, and they can guide you on the most appropriate type of pension and help you understand what can and can't be done. But definitely something that is well worth thinking about if you're looking to almost future-proof and pre-fund your child's legacy and their assets for the future.
And maybe there's a point attached to that around whether you can employ your teenage children. Maybe you can expand on that, Paul.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the employment laws in the UK, I'm led to believe, allow businesses to employ teenage children, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm just going to say I'm not 100% on this. I'm pretty sure it's from 14 onwards. You can check with your tax expert or an accountant, but let's say from when you're in your mid-teens, you could, if you wanted to, start employing your children at a reasonably low level, at a sensible level, but that would have the impact of allowing you as a business to also pay some pension contributions towards that pension, which means that the standard minimum £3,600 we were talking about could be topped up on, because it's pension contributions that are being paid from the business. And the great thing about that, and actually in general, not just for children but for any business owner, it's a big point, so we should touch on it now, is there's a huge tax efficiency to paying pension contributions into any pension, but obviously today's topic is SSAS, because the value of those pension contributions should be tax deductible for the business, which means an immediate corporation tax saving on that money. So it's a brilliant way of shifting wealth from what is ultimately the taxable environment of a business into the tax-free environment of the SSAS, and of course the future inheritance tax-free environment too, of course.
Yeah. Keeping more of your own money, which is really the whole ethos behind the SSAS, right?
Well, absolutely. Look, anything you can do to mitigate the amount of tax you can pay, and to be creative with your wealth and the way that you structure your wealth, is definitely something that you should be considering, not least, as a business owner, but for anyone with plans to create and build wealth. It's, tax planning is a fundamental part of that. It's, huge benefit in paying in new contributions for you, for your children, and as we've said, you can start at a very early age.
Now, there's a few criteria, aren't there, around eligibility for who can and can't set up a SSAS, and obviously we've helped hundreds and hundreds of people with that, and it's a relatively simple process, certainly just to ascertain is someone SSAS ready or not. Obviously you have to be a business owner, so that's one of those criteria. You have to be a director of a limited company here in the UK. But let's just talk about the business element then, Paul. Some of the other benefits, protecting the money from business risk, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great point. And, I suppose one of the other values that you gain automatically when you've shifted wealth from the business into the SSAS, let's say through some contributions, which you can do each tax year, because each tax year the allowance that a person gets for new contributions renews. It's currently £40,000 per tax year. That might change in the future, but at the moment it's £40,000 per individual per tax year. But one of the great things is, if you've got a business that holds lots of cash, putting to one side, there can be challenges with things like business property relief which is a whole other topic for a different day probably. But that money's not doing anything. It's probably not working, and it certainly won't be working tax-free. By contributing that money in, you're almost wrapping it up within the safety net of the SSAS. So not only is it sheltered from tax on growth and income and obviously inheritance tax in the future, but you take it outside of the risks that a business can encounter, like going into administration or liquidation. It's no longer an asset of the SSAS when it's paid as a no longer an asset of the business. It's not on the business's balance sheet anymore. It's paid in. It's been claimed as a tax relievable expense. It's now owned by the SSAS. So as long as you're not deliberately manipulating things with a failing business and just pumping lots of money into the SSAS, knowing imminently the business was failed, that isn't allowed, and undoubtedly the courts would undo that. But if you've got a genuine business operating live and active, making good profit, and you're paying money in, and then some way down the road, as sadly we've seen in the last 18 months, things can happen that derail the business, that money is not liable to attack from creditors or from being sued for doing something, in the general course of business. And these are all business risks that every business owner takes, but, it's another way of protecting the wealth for the future.
Brilliant. So Paul, we've covered obviously all of the tax benefits there, tax-free growth until 75, maximising the legacy for many decades, how to really involve all your family, obviously get your kids started early with pensions and the education around that as well. And obviously we're developing the Wealth Builders for Families program as well. So, some of this information we'll definitely be including in there as well. Is there anything we haven't covered around the topic of creating a family trust fund?
Well, I don't think so. Probably only one thing, and it's really just a practical point. But, we've been talking about boosting the value with contributions. We've been talking about, having the SSAS as a great family tool for educating your children. We've talked about the tax benefits. But I suppose if you think about it in a very practical and a simple way, bringing your children into your SSAS ultimately extends the life of that pension trust fund, because when we're no longer here and we pass things on to our children, just like you can pass on a business to your loved ones, don't necessarily need to be children of course, but to your loved ones, you can pass on your SSAS to your loved ones and they can inherit it as a tax-free trust fund, and they can continue to operate it in the same way. So they ultimately take the reins of the SSAS and they guide it forward for the rest of their life, and hopefully create something that they can pass on down to their children or their loved ones in future.
Which is not the case with most traditional pensions.
Well, it's not, but not because the law doesn't allow it largely, but because most pension providers, especially company pensions, don't want to have to worry about keeping an asset with another beneficiary as the owner. They really usually want to just locate who you've nominated as your beneficiary and pay the money out to them. And certainly if you're not very careful, what you can end up with is a fantastic tax-free legacy that just gets paid outside of the pension and gets paid to whoever you want to benefit, but now is no longer wrapped up in the safety net of that tax-free environment, which means at some point down the line, that money is going to be sitting inside that person's estate and probably is going to be under attack from inheritance tax. So, a SSAS is geared up to do that. It is a perpetual legacy vehicle. So it's very easy for somebody else to take the reins and just continue on with that vehicle. It's far less easy to do that with other types of pension.
Yeah. Paul, that's been absolutely fantastic. I think we've covered some really, really interesting points there. Hopefully some points that our listeners wouldn't have realised or been aware of. So we're going to have to get you back on a bit more regularly, I think.
Well, look, I'd love to, Chris. I really would. I find these chats just brilliant, and I love sharing, the knowledge that I've got with people just in the same way as you and Kevin do. I know that. So let's get another one in the diary soon.
Cool. All right. Well, see you on the golf course on Monday then, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. Look forward to it. Hopefully we'll have some sun.